According to the CDC, during 2003 through 2014, homicide was the leading cause of death for women under the age of 44. During this period, 55% of all women homicides were attributed to intimate partner violence, referred to as IPV in the published literature. In other words, when it comes to the murder of women, the greatest risk comes from your married or unmarried intimate partner. So the question is, why are we as a society not talking about this, not educating women about the behavior patterns that are the predictors of violence in a relationship?
The underlying danger here is that if you're with a covert abuser, somebody that engages in coercive control, it's their attitude towards women and partners is one of ownership, possession, using her as a resource, and that dismissal can turn into disposal, and that's why it can become a lethality risk.
My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. My guest is Ruth Darlene, founder and CEO of Women of Silicon Valley, a nonprofit company dedicated to helping women break out of a relationship dominated by abuse and coercive control. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
My opening statement quoted some grim statistics about women homicides, but those numbers are just the tip of the iceberg. Your work involves a larger population of women who suffer abuse and coercive control. Can you give us an overview of your mission?
Yes, thank you so much, Jim. This is not your traditional domestic violence agency. We are very familiar with traditional forms of domestic violence, physical and sexual, that leave evidence behind, bruises, broken bones, blood. But there's another type of abuse out there that's much more difficult to recognize, and it is also a lethality risk, but it often doesn't leave forensic evidence behind. Emotional abuse, financial, legal, technological, these are all different aspects of coercive control, and our mission is to raise awareness about this issue, to educate young people and grown adults alike about the dangers, the warning signs, and help them recognize what to do about it if they find themselves in an abusive relationship.
Now, your work is, from what I read in your website and the conversation we had, in the, can I say, more affluent areas, the more professional areas? Is that accurate?
The more education you have, the more resources you have, the more sophistication you have, the more tools you have at your disposal. You don't have to be so obvious in your threats and in your control. Fists and weapons are for amateurs. When you are a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a professional, you can be so much more sophisticated in the way you control and threaten and isolate an intimate partner.
In your work, is it both this higher, more sophisticated control as well as some physical violence, or is it mainly the control?
Such an important question. Do you know that over 40% of our survivors that we have served have experienced non-fatal strangulation at the hands of their intimate partner? And we're talking doctor, lawyer, engineer, CEO, religious leader, partner, with one face in public, another behind closed doors.
Can I ask you, what do you mean by that? Do you mean the hands around the throat, but they didn't suffocate them?
Yes, non-fatal strangulation, hands around the throat, impeding the flow of oxygen or blood to the brain. And if it's done in a game, if it's done in a bedroom, if it's done in an argument, it's all the same when it comes to being a lethality risk. So we do deal with physical and sexual violence, but what does the most damage is the ongoing control that a woman is subjected to when she ends up living like a prisoner in her own home. We owe a great debt of gratitude to the battered women's movement, who the domestic violence agencies and strong men and women who put the issue of domestic violence on the map and created shelters and places for women to go and places to seek help as a result of being physically and sexually abused. The unintended consequence of that was this focus on physical violence and as a one-off. This event happened, this person was brought to justice, paid his debt, now let's move on. It's put in a silo. That's very different from coercive control, which is this ongoing pattern, and that's the key word. It's not an isolated event. It's, imagine yourself out in the night sky looking at a star here, star there, star there. a behavior here, a little bit of road rage, being rude to a server, questioning what she's wearing or who she was talking to at that party. Those are little dots in the sky. You connect them over time and you create this constellation called the covert abuser. But it's a pattern of behavior, isolating, threatening, controlling behavior without often forensic evidence to go along with it until sometimes it's too late.
How pervasive is this? Do you have any sense of this? Is this 1 out of 10?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk about how pervasive physical violence is towards women on the planet. 1 in 3 women will be severely beaten or raped during her lifetime. 1 in 3 on the planet. And that means if it hasn't happened to someone close to you, then it's probably happened to your next door neighbor, to a colleague, someone in your circle of influence. But that we're talking about physical violence, where we have not started to keep track sufficiently of the more subtle forms of abuse. So you can imagine if it's 1 in 3 severe physical or sexual violence, how much more common is it when these cases are not brought to court or get police involvement to engage in this kind of control that involves emotional, financial, legal, technological abuse. So very common.
Okay. So I do know some women who have been through this, by the way, and I've observed it in some situations too. And I've had a couple of conversations with them, and they said it starts out extremely subtly. First is the pedestal. I'm giving you my understanding of what they've told me. The pedestal, and now the devaluation, and then the last one is really kind of a dismissal type thing. But the abuser never wants the woman to leave the relationship, but it's a degradation. Maybe that's the better word. Is that accurate?
That is one powerful way of looking at it. In that first stage, you often see this kind of grooming behavior, and I use that word grooming very intentionally because that's what pedophiles do too. It's like, here, kitty, kitty, let me show you all the wonderful things I want to share with you. Showering their partner with attention and affection and possibly gifts or promising vacations, and really putting on their best performance. Performance is the key word here. They're often very, very charming in the beginning, and that's the word I hear over and over again from my ladies. He was so charming, witty, articulate, the consummate salesman, very good at impression management. And yes, in the beginning there is that sort of elevated status, putting you on a pedestal. Oh, you're so much smarter than any other woman I've ever met, or you're so much more sane than my crazy ex-wife. Watch out for that. There's one little dot to put away in your pocket, how he talks about previous relationships. Then over time, is he cutting somebody off in traffic because he got mad? Is he being rude to a server in a restaurant? How does he treat people who he perceives to have less power than he does? Then once he gets more of a sense that you're in the relationship, that you've fallen for him, then you may start to see, as soon as you see these commitment milestones, he says, I love you, you say it back, or you say it, then you often see more and more of this kind of control emerge. I think we'll talk about that later. So there's that pedestal treatment, then that sort of commitment, and then that kind of eventual devaluation of them, taking her for granted, starting to put pressure on her to behave in a certain way, and a kind of a dismissal. The underlying danger here is that if you're with a covert abuser, somebody that engages in coercive control, it's their attitude towards women and partners is one of ownership, possession, using her as a resource, and that dismissal can turn into disposal, and that's why it can become a lethality risk.
I have 2 questions I want to talk about. What about the isolation of friends and family? That seems to be another pattern. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. See, if we think about coercive control as a pattern of isolating, threatening, controlling behavior, isolating is key. So, and it goes along with the kind of gaslighting stage and the love bombing that happens in the beginning. Love bombing is a term that is often used where he's so full of attention for her and can't bear to be away from her and is texting her multiple times a day. So surrounding her with this sort of cloud of love and affection and attention, it's intoxicating. And often, even in a healthy relationship, women may disappear from their regular social network for a while because they're just head over heels in enjoying falling in love. And often women in this type of relationship, they feel like they're getting swept off their feet. He just seems like Prince Charming. And over time, he may start to question the friends that she has, even her own parents or extended family, wondering what she sees in them, or feeling uncomfortable around them, or making it hard for her to see her other friends and spend time with anybody other than him. It looks like the ulterior motive there is he doesn't want her to be comparing the outside world to the way he's treating her. He wants to become her new normal, the better to control her with.
So now there are two areas I really want to go into. One is, how does a woman recognize this, and what are the first steps a woman takes, either within your organization or other agencies or services, to deal with it? I mean, how do you go about this? So, we may have the people in our audience who go, yeah, I've been feeling pretty bad about things lately, and what's my first step?
Yes, the first step is looking within to that feeling. I've been feeling pretty bad about this. To start within, because if you're with a covert abuser, they don't want you to look within. They want you to listen only to them, so that your reality is defined by them. But once you start to feel like, how do I feel after I spent time with this person? Am I feeling dismissed, demeaned, depressed, scared, anxious? You need to pay attention to those signals. And what is he doing that's making you feel that way? Is he starting to put you down, especially in front of other people, mocking you, teasing you, jokes at your expense? Is he starting to control where you go, who you talk to? Are you being punished in some way if you spend too long out without texting or checking in with him? Is he texting you multiple times a day? In the beginning, it can look like he's really concerned about you, but over time, is that starting to look like stalking?
Okay, so I'm a woman, I'm concerned, I'm watching this pattern, I'm even watch it grow over time, say a couple of years. What do I do? Do I read it? Do I contact you? What's my test? What's my litmus test, if I can say that, about starting the process of defining what I've got in this relationship, and how severe is it? Is it manageable? Is it not manageable? Or maybe.
Yeah. Early on in the relationship, if he has done something that has hurt you, then a key litmus test is, how does he respond when you point that out? Does he apologize? Honey, it hurts my feelings when you make fun of my cooking in front of our guests. How does he respond to that? Does he apologize? Does he say, oh, so sorry, I didn't realize that was hurting your feelings? That's a healthy person in a healthy relationship. Does he blow it off? Does he say, what are you talking about? I would never make fun of your cooking. Does he dismiss it? Does he throw it back on you and say, oh, if you weren't such a lousy cook, I wouldn't have to make these comments? So how does he respond in these early stages? But over time, are you feeling like your voice is being silenced, that you can't bring these issues to him, or even if he promises to change, he doesn't? When you start to identify certain characteristics in your partner, that he is lying often, easily, even when he doesn't need to, when he lacks self-reflection, when he lacks empathy, when he doesn't show any remorse for ever having hurt you, when he seems to lack some kind of moral compass, truth varies according to what his purpose is in the moment, when the world needs to revolve around him, when he feels like he's always the smartest guy in the room, and unfortunately often he is, but it has to be all about him, and you'll be punished if the spotlight ever shines on you. And is there also kind of this almost a satisfaction that he seems to derive from causing you some kind of pain or suffering? And is he kind of opportunistic, looking for ways to hurt you? If you reveal a vulnerability, is that where he goes to insert the sword? Does he have one face in public, another behind closed doors?
Okay.
When you see these signs, that's when it's time to start taking action.
Okay. So now let's say the woman decides, I'm going to take action. Now, I don't know where this starts, but I assume there's some legal action, or is it get your house in order action?
The house in order is key. So if you have identified your partner as a covert abuser, someone who engages in coercive control, you are dealing with a dangerous man. And I say I'm using he for the perpetrator and she for victim, because coercive control tends to be a gender-based crime. Not always, but it often is. Usually is. And once you've identified your partner as a coercively controlling covert abuser, then it is not going to serve you well to confront him on that, because they do not do well with the truth. They will see that as an attack, and they will counter that with another attack. You give them a nudge, they'll give you a knockout punch, physically or verbally. Okay. So be very careful, cover your steps, hold your cards close to your chest, and then start to plan. Educate yourself. You could go to the library, start reading books about what does coercive control look like. You can do a Google search. You can visit my website, womensv.org, to get. We have lots of information on there. You can reach out to a domestic violence agency. There's 5 wonderful domestic violence agencies in Santa Clara County, and you can they have hotlines that you can call to get more information. You can call Women SV to get information. You can come to a support group. Gather your village. It's very important to gather your village, gather your allies, and be very, very discreet when you're planning your next move.
Okay, so now I've read some of your literature, and I've read some other general literature. One of the key points is financial. Get some financial money, set some money aside, basically, because when you're going to exit, parachute out of this situation, you've got to have a secure landing spot, whether that's living in somebody's home or sharing a home, but you've got to have some money on your side. What do you advise in that area?
Yes, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like food, shelter, clothing, these basic things need to be in place, plus a source of income, plus some kind of legal representation if you can manage it. I would add that to Maslow's hierarchy when you're dealing with this kind of issue, and this should all be done very discreetly. You know, financial reasons are one of the main reasons why a woman stays in an abusive relationship, and one of the main reasons why she goes back. In fact, the average number of times a woman goes back to her abusive partner is 7, but each time the abuse gets worse.
7 times?
7, yes. But I think one of the main reasons why they go back is this lack of sufficient planning beforehand, recognizing what the obstacles are to getting out and staying out. And financial ones, the financial reason is a big one.
Okay. What is the most common response when the woman starts to, let's say he doesn't detect anything, but once it becomes known, like she's moved out now, what's the most common response that you see?
Revenge.
Revenge.
They are very punitive. They do not do self-reflection. They decide that she has declared war on them, so be it, and they go to war. And it's about destroying her, destroying her credibility, destroying any source of income she might have, destroying her relationship with her children.
Okay, what's the best response?
I would not advise, well, we don't give advice, we give suggestions, but for a woman going into battle with a professional covert abuser to try to match a partner blow for blow will not end well. I think it's very important for her to do some research and find a savvy attorney that is skilled in coercive control, who knows laws about it. We now have laws on the books about it. Family Code 6320 is all about coercive control. I've been doing this for 11 years, and we finally have a law on the books, thank God, in California about coercive control, financial, technological, emotional abuse, isolating, threatening, controlling behavior. It's all in there in that law. Right. And if you can, financial abuse, if you can establish that pattern, you can get a restraining order on the basis of coercive control now. So, but it must be done in the hands of a skilled attorney.
And you have contacts or referrals? Yeah.
Well, we don't refer. We suggest interviews. Because it's buyer beware, we can't guarantee outcomes. It's like any weight loss program. Individual results will vary, and one person may praise an attorney, another say that attorney didn't serve me well. But we have a list of names to interview, and then it's up to her to make her own decision and fire that attorney if that attorney turns out not to serve her well.
We have a few minutes. I'm going to do 2 things. I want you to give follow-up information, but I'd like you to give, if you don't mind, a case study. If you could give an example, obviously no names, of somebody, briefly describe the situation and what happened and how that woman hopefully was successful in getting her independence.
So there was a lady who was involved with a partner for 15 years, and there was a gradual pattern increase in control. She didn't really have the vocabulary to describe it until she started reading about coercive control. She joined our support group. She got some vocabulary around it, started to understand what was happening to her, and decided that she deserved better than she was getting. She was being treated like a servant in her own home. It's another feature of coercive control, turning you into like a Stepford wife, where you exist to serve, to take care of the kids, put meals on the table, and basically be treated like a servant. And she'd had a stunning career before. So bit by bit, she gathered her allies around her. She sought legal assistance. She came to our support group. She had had control of her finances seized by her partner. We had connected her with a certified divorce financial analyst who helped her understand what she was entitled to. We did safety planning around all the areas that she was coming under attack: emotional, financial, legal, technological. We helped her develop a safety plan to address each one of those areas. We suggested educational materials for her to read to anticipate future attacks, and continue to have her come to the support group. That's what she wanted to do, make friends with other ladies there. So step by step, she was able to create a plan and then execute it and get out. And then she's got a new job now. She's restarted her career, and she's created her own home, which is her own sanctuary, and living a life of freedom. And that's what every woman, every man, every child deserves: a home with peace and safety and freedom.
Good. Well, this has been remarkable. I've learned so much. How would a person follow up with you? Is it the website or their emails? What do you recommend?
Oh, thank you so much, Jim, and thank you for doing that research. So if they'd like to get in touch with us, they can call our office line, and that's 833-WOMEN-SV. It's 833-966-3678. Or you can visit our website at womensv.org, SV for Silicon Valley.
Right.
So women is plural, womensv.org.
Now, you're a nonprofit, so you also raise funding to cover the costs. This is no cost to the clients or the people who come to you.
Exactly.
How do people make donations?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. It's always a struggle as a nonprofit, and especially with the population we serve, where there's this perception of wealth, where women are often just struggling to put food on the table. So they can visit womensv.org and click on the donate button, and we'd be happy to accept your support. So thank you so much.
Well, Ruth Darlene, thank you so much. You've been an excellent guest. The information and insights you provided to me and to the audience, I think, I want to commend you for that. And I've really enjoyed meeting you, and I want to wish you every success going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, Jim.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. If you found this conversation insightful, share it with your network and subscribe to receive notifications of new shows. You can view all shows at our website, gamechangers.tv. If you like podcasts, you can find us on your podcast app by searching for Game Changers Silicon Valley. We look forward to your continued interest in future shows.